Hey, Slop Dog! The Brainiacs are ready!
Welcome into Leather Brains. Your host here, Slap Dog, episode 166. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is March 26th, and there is some things to talk about, and that's why I clicked record. Now, I'm not alone. I got the full crew with me like I have for the last few weeks, and it has been such a great time. I have Scotty Del Rey, Alan Casanova Castro, and the Big Yeti himself. Gentlemen, happy Tuesday. Great day.
I think this is a record that we're all together.
I know. It usually doesn't.
Going on 4 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
We're growing up.
Well,
I have commitment issues. I won't be on the next one. I can't be with you guys that long.
This is getting too serious, actually.
4 weeks at a time. This is all you can do.
well, I'm glad to have you here, though, Alan.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today, as well as the rest of you guys. There is a lot of rule changes that have happened in the NFL. There is some free agency movement. There is a bunch of stuff going on. So let's just get into it. Let's start with the veteran free agency moves. Actually, before we do this, I do want to let everybody know, all of our listeners out there, that we are giving away a free jersey. So we have been doing it for the last 3 weeks. It's March Gladness, baby. We're trying to bring some joy and some gladness to all of you out there. We are giving away a free Zay Flowers signed jersey. And it's simple. All you got to do is go to your favorite you got to go to your favorite podcast platform, give us a rating, hopefully 5 stars. We'd appreciate that. Comment on there, screenshot your comment, go over to Twitter or X or whatever the kids are calling it these days, and go reply to our tweet with your comment, and you're entered to win. So go get a free signed Zay Flowers jersey. Very simple to get entered. Now let's move over to the veteran free agency. We'll start with this. D'Onta Foreman has signed with the Cleveland Browns. Not too crazy. I don't think we need to go into analysis there. And then Joe Flacco signs with the Colts. They needed a backup for Anthony Richardson, and Joe Flacco is still playing in the NFL. So congratulations to the Colts. The one that I think probably our 2 resident Chiefs fans want to talk about here is Sneed. The cornerback for the Chiefs is no longer with the Chiefs. He was traded to the Titans. Are you guys okay? Are you mentally stable? Are you emotional? Are you fine with it? What are your thoughts here?
What did you think? Let me spin this back really quick. What did you think of what the Chiefs got in return, which was
you're asking me?
Like a 3rd and a 7th? Yeah. You were Yeti.
I think it was fine. You know, I think it sucks because Sneed is a very good defensive player for you guys, but you got a 3rd round and what was it, a 7th round or a 6th round? I think it was 7th. I don't think that was a bad haul for him. You had him on a 1-year deal anyway, so he wasn't going to be around probably after this year because the Chiefs couldn't afford to pay him anyway. So you let him go, you get some draft capital. Yeah, it sucks because you did lose him, but I think all things considered, for a 1-year rental, you guys came out on top. That's my opinion, but I don't know. Not being the Chiefs fan, I'd be curious to know how you guys feel.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of hand-wringing. I saw a lot of the talking heads on ESPN dissecting this and being like, wow, I can't believe the Chiefs didn't get more. And that was my initial was like, oh shit, like that's what we got. But then, when you look into like what the Chiefs have done drafting wise, they do have McDuffie there on the other side. I think Sneed would have been a great. I think they could have waited a little bit before dealing him, but the cap space was an issue. Like they needed to clear it up. They signed Chris Jones, so they obviously made a decision. But I think if you look at what the Chiefs did, this is like a dynasty blueprint for what you're supposed to be doing with assets as you're acquiring them. Sneed won't be the last cornerback. That's great. He's not the first. They do have others. It sucks to lose him, but if you look at what they did, they drafted him in the 4th round. They turned him into a top 10 cornerback. 3 years later, flipped him for 2 additional picks, all while winning 2 Super Bowls with him and him being a cornerstone. Like that's honestly what you're supposed to do. Like the Chiefs should be focused on drafting and developing rather than signing and acquiring, which is what a lot of teams try to build their teams like. And so when you look at it through that lens, you're like, okay, it is a kick in the nuts because you are going to miss that lockdown corner, but it's also like this is kind of part of the game right now with how the Chiefs are being ran as an organization.
I also think it's just interesting to look at it from the Titans' perspective because we talked about it a little bit last week, but these guys are going all in on Will Levis. They are signing everybody, and they are paying everybody a ridiculous amount of money. Granted, they have a lot of cap space left, but I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on, what we saw from Will Levis last year. He had some good games. He looked impressive in some moments. He looked like a rookie in other moments. Is it smart for them to just start spending all this money and go all in to be competitive right now?
I think a lot of teams in the NFL now are looking at teams like the 49ers and the Chiefs and trying to take advantage of rookie quarterback contracts. Whether they are fully committed to that rookie quarterback or not, I think it's important for the general manager to surround that rookie quarterback or second-year quarterback now with as much talent as possible to get a fair evaluation out of that quarterback. Or else Will Levis was a second-round draft pick and he has all the talent in the world, but if he doesn't have the coaching staff and the support around him from the players, he's going to fall flat on his face. And I think that was part of the reason why Levis looked so bad last year. So they're giving him all the weapons this year, giving him a supporting cast on the defensive side. I like it. Now it's just a matter of can all the pieces come together during the regular season.
Well, I think the Titans are a great example, but let's not forget the Bears. I mean, the Bears are doing the exact same thing with Caleb Williams as he is coming into the NFL. So I think, it's kind of shown, and the Bengals, historically, they did that as well, where they got Joe Burrow and then they started surrounding him with talented, also young pieces, but talented individuals that were able to help push that agenda, and they didn't have to pay him a high amount of money. And that's where, am I sold on Will Levis and the Titans? Absolutely not. I just look at that roster. You have an aging D-Hop. I don't think Calvin Ridley is as nearly great as what they paid him to be. They lost Vrabel, who has been a cornerstone and has historically been a great coach that has squeezed a lot of talent out of a team that has been somewhat lackluster otherwise. Yeah, I'm not bought in on the mailman. I don't think he is the right answer, but I think that you look at what the team's doing, and I understand why they're doing it, because you look at the product that the Titans were last year and have been over the last few years, and they really haven't done anything to try and bring in talent to succeed, aside from let's hand the ball off to Derrick Henry. Let's throw the ball to A.J. Brown. And if you look, neither of those guys are there, and Ryan Tannehill was never a great quarterback to begin with. So do I think Will Levis is the answer? Absolutely not, but I also think that he probably is in a better situation than Tannehill had been in the last few years as well.
Yeah,
that's my look at it.
What do you guys think across the board? Will Levis, yes or no?
No.
Gun to my head right now, no.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you make me choose between yes and no, I'm going to go no.
No. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at too. That's why I question a lot of these moves too from the Titans, because it's like some of these contracts are like pretty hindering, like the Ridley one, Pollard getting 20+ million. Like there's some big contracts for guys that like haven't shown they can produce or haven't shown it in quite some time that they can produce. So it's a little bit interesting situation they find themselves in, because if they do have to move from Levis, they're going to have to rebuild again through the draft. Then what do you do with a lot of their, like you had mentioned, slaps their aging assets? So they are kind of weirdly going all in on players. They're just like overpaying all over the place to get talent in the room.
I think Yeti brought up a really good point too, is I think that the Titans are trying to emulate kind of what the 49ers have done, where they're like, oh, we don't have to pay this guy a shit ton of money in Brock Purdy, and we'll surround him with talent and we'll watch them succeed. I think if you look at roster wise, the difference is you have like the Walmart brand team, which is the Titans, and then you have like the Target brand, and that's the 49ers, and that's kind of where they're at. So that's how I look at it. I don't think the Titans are I get maybe why they're doing it, but I still don't think that that's the success they're going to need to win games. So let's go over to there's a lot that has happened with the annual league meeting and the fallout that has commenced because of all these changes. So let's start with coaches in the coaching challenge. All of the NFL coaches now have earned an additional challenge. They get 3 in total if they win one of them. So they still have 2, but if they win one of their challenges, they now have an additional challenge. I don't hate this necessarily, and this kind of and I'll kind of lump these together. We'll also talk about the Sky Judge. This is one that I'm really, really excited about, to be honest with you. They have a Sky Judge / replay system in place that will now be able to correct incorrect calls on the field. So if one of the zebras out there calls a roughing the passer call or an intentional grounding call and it is incorrect, the Sky Cam can then say, hey, that was not the right call. Let's get this fixed. I'm for that. I'm for technology. I am for bringing in the technology. The chain gang should be non-existent anymore. All they are is just a hindrance to the game. There's somebody that's going to get run over and somebody's going to get tangled in the chains. We live in 2024. We have cameras in our pockets. Let's utilize the technology that we do have, bring it onto the field, and implement it so we don't have it takes the human error out of it and makes it a more realistic game.
Yeah.
We've talked consistently over the last few years of the NFL's rigged. Right, that is a very common thing that you hear constantly. You want to go over to X, and I guarantee you, if you look something up on is the NFL rigged, somebody probably tweeted it 30 seconds ago. Like that's where it's at. So that conversation then gets to be removed from the entire dichotomy of the NFL, and it's was this player in or out? Was this, and there is always going to be some human element, but I'm of the belief that you remove as much of the human element and implement the technology to be able to make it more fair for both parties. So I'm of both the coach getting an additional challenge. I think that's fair, but really what I do love is the sky cam judge.
Yeah. I'm questioning like the cadence of it. Like, why haven't they just gone all in on all of it all at once? Like, what does it ultimately change other than does the NFL really like a little bit of that controversy as it ups the engagement? Like, you have to remember, NFL's it registers as an entertainment. And it, and that's what they want, and they want it to be entertaining. So some part of it is like, well, there's a little bit of the human element that like acts in on making it interesting. I think the Sky Judge should, I don't know why they just don't look at everything at all times in real time. Like do away with the challenge system. That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like they should just be looking at replays all the time. They have people watching every second of every game. You have millions of people watching. You could have 30 people in a room. The NFL could have somewhere in New York just like looking at stuff and paging in when things need to be corrected, and just do it in real time, like speed the game up. So I think that's the part that's the most annoying for everybody, is just okay, now we got to wait and challenge it. Okay, let's review it. And then they don't even get it right that time sometimes. So it's like, well, if you're not going to get it right anyways, just fucking do it right away.
Yeah, well, I think that's the hesitancy. I think that's why they're not going all in, is because the concern is that adding all of these sky judges or whatever it might be might actually delay the game. If you are allowing every single penalty to be reviewable, in a perfect world, you have somebody in the sky box who says, oh, that was wrong, and you get it, you signal down to the earpiece of the referee before the next play starts, and you just get it corrected. But in reality, you're going to have close calls that they have to look at, and if they're reviewing everything, then every single play is going to be under review, and it's potentially going to be a big headache. So I think they want to implement these things slowly to make sure that they work in the time frame. They don't slow down the game, but they do speed up the game, and I think we're going to continue to see this over the course of the next few seasons.
I think you see it working quick in some aspects, especially on like catch, no catch, where like literally the refs will make a call, and as he's picking up the ball, you see him like holding his earpiece down, and somebody's in his ear being like, no, it's incomplete, and they're like, hey, after it's incomplete. Like, I think it can work fast. I don't think I have to be a long
I think that's their goal
to get it right.
I think that's why they're doing this, because that's the assumption that it can work fast. But I also don't think they want to go all in on that assumption and then find out, oh shit, this actually causes a bunch of headaches. So I think they're going to do it incrementally. I mean, we saw the same thing with some of the rules we're going to talk about later on, where they're, for example, the kickoff rule, which we're about to talk about. They basically didn't have an answer for what to do with the kickoff, so they made it, fair catch and moved it up, and so everything is a touchback. And that was just basically a delayed step while they figured out a real solution. And that's what we're seeing here as well.
But on the flip side of it, this is also entertainment. And if people are continuing to sit there and watch this football game, they don't want to speed it up too much, because if they do, then people, the games get over quicker and they don't have people's attention as long either. So I think there's probably a give and take. I tend to agree with you, Scotty. I do think that it's probably a slow implementation to make sure that things just don't go catastrophically wrong. But I would also like to inject the fact that this is still entertainment, and I think that in some fashion the NFL still wants to have that well, what if? That looked like a catch. Was it not? Was it? And I think there's probably a gray area, and that's where the NFL is.
But those gray areas are always going to be there. I mean, you can get rid of half of the stupid penalties and make the game go so much smoother, and you can still have those controversial calls that get people's attention. Those are always going to be a part of the game. It's just a matter of cleaning things up and making it so that, as a Chiefs fan, I couldn't be more in favor of automation, because I don't want them to say, oh, the refs are just married to the Chiefs every single game, all the time,
That's my
always,
favorite
forever.
Thing to say. I love saying that.
So I'm all on board with as much automation and automatic stuff as we can get.
I think
The issue we have with challenging or challenges in general is if we have a sky judge coming in for every single play now, or if a play is questionable, how much longer are games going to go? Because NFL games right now, they last, 3 to 4 hours? If every questionable call now is just all of a sudden, hold on, we're going to challenge this real quick, our game's going to suddenly go up to, 5 hours in length as opposed to a normal 3-hour window or like a 4-hour window. And I understand it's entertainment, but from a fan perspective, if I'm watching a Raiders Cardinals game that's 0-0 in the fourth quarter, like
I think that's a realistic score too.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Like I want out after 3 hours. I don't want to sit and watch a game like that for 4.5, 5 hours if the game is being delayed due to challenges.
Well, we're talking about the game being delayed due to, these challenges and these implementations. So let's just talk about the hip drop tackle that is now banned in the NFL. Do you think that this rule actually hurts defenses? Because that's been kind of the conversation that has been floated around in media. And do you guys think that this was the right move for the NFL to remove hip drop tackles?
So I want to start this off by saying I think everybody's initial reaction is the NFL doesn't look out for defenses. They are only looking out for the offenses. But over the years, since 2000, the NFL has implemented a bunch of different rules for player safety, and I'm all for player safety. Since 2000, the NFL has implemented rules such as the horse collar penalty, low hits to quarterbacks, defenseless player protection now. And honestly, we haven't seen that much of a difference from defenses. Defenses have held their own basically over the past 20 to 25 years now, basically. In the 2000s, offenses were gaining about 338 yards per game and scoring about 21 points per game. During the 2010s, that number went up by about 30 yards per game and then 1 point per game. And then in the 2020s, yards per game has actually gone down and the points scored hasn't gone up that drastically. So I think defenses are fine. It's an overreaction to think that defenses are automatically going to be screwed by this penalty.
Are defenses too fine? That's where we're starting to get into the conversation of have defenses gotten to be too potent? That we've seen, and this was actually talked about at this roundtable here with all the annual league meeting, is average scoring is down actually in the NFL, and average scoring was in 2020 49 points, and this last year it's down to 43.5 points. So we're starting to see, are the defenses just getting that much better, or are the offenses getting that much worse? Is it a medley of both? Because you look at the metrics and scoring is fun. Scoring is something that makes, for us fantasy football enthusiasts, that's what we live off of, is getting the scores and getting the plays. And that has gone down over the last 2 years. And so have defenses gotten too good?
I thought Alan was going to say something there. Sorry.
No, oh good. I was going to say, I think they're just having to adjust, and I think that's what this is. I think I look at these changes, and yes, it's player safety. Yes, we look at above of the sky judge, which I don't know if that's a weird name to me, like a sky god, but it's a weird. I don't know. Maybe have they landed? Is it sky judge? Is that what we're going with?
That's what we're calling it here at Leather Brains.
Sky judge. It's just quality of life improvements. I think these are all positive things. Embracing technology, embracing, you learn about player safety. It's lengthening out players' careers just a little bit more to be able to play the game they want to play. And I think not only that, but it keeps your product on the field. Like, people not getting injured is paramount, especially at the quarterback position for the NFL, because you see what it does. It waters down the game completely. Like, this is all the league's all about quarterback play. If you have a top tier quarterback, your team is playing pretty well. If you don't, they're not, and the product is not as great. And I think quality of life improvements to keep the quality of the product on the field at the top of its game is important. And unfortunately for the defense, it is the offense. Like, that is how it is. Like, people that love watching a good basketball game, tend to lean towards the offense, the points being scored. Like, it's fat, it's moving, it's flowing. Like, and that's what they want to get to. And when you look at some of the hip drop stuff, I was encouraged with the move just because it's like, yeah, that sucks. That's a shitty thing to have to deal with. This is something rugby's implemented. You have was it Matty Johns back in December was asked about should the NFL ban the hip drop, and he says absolutely, not a doubt in the world. He says what it's doing is ruining people's careers. It leads to really bad ACL injuries, broken legs, horrendous ankle injuries. So I think it's a no-brainer. And you look at rugby as being like this manly man, rough, rugged sport where they don't have pads. They're just beating the shit out of each other. And they're saying, yeah, probably because of it's basically just ruining guys' careers. And I think it's an appropriate move. And I think the points and the scoring, it'll figure itself out. The defense will figure it out. Everybody adjusts, but I think it's quality of life improvement overall.
Well, my initial thought when I saw this, and I think my initial thought is different than what you guys are describing it, but I think my initial thought goes more along with what most football fans thought when they first saw this, which is, what the hell are we doing? Like you're banning tackling now. Like this is crazy. And I was concerned not only about that, but also about how are they going to call this? I mean, this is such a gray area type call that you have to make in the moment. It's going to be impossible, but I've actually been talked off the ledge a little bit. I've been watching some interviews with some NFL insiders at this meeting, and pretty much unanimously what I'm hearing is the expectation is that they're going to call it a few times in the preseason, but it's not really going to be an on-the-field penalty. They're not really going to throw the flag for it, but it's going to be something that players get fined for after the fact to try and motivate players to not do this. So it's hopefully not going to impact the game much while they can simultaneously tell people, hey, don't do this or it's going to cost you money. I am a little concerned, and only time will tell, because all of us are for player safety. I mean, we want players to have long careers and we want them to be healthy. And maybe this does a great job with preventing these sort of injuries. But I'm concerned. I was a defensive player, and if you don't have the opportunity, especially if you're talking about hitting the quarterback, for example, there were in the little reel that they showed at the meeting, they showed examples of hip drop tackles, and several of them were on quarterbacks in the pocket. And the reason that the hip drop tackle happens in the pocket is because the defender can't put their body weight on the quarterback. So you're going to hit them. You can't hit them in the back. You can't hit them high. You can't hit them low. You can't hit them and then drop off. You can't unweight yourself, as they say it, where you wrap up and then just drop to the ground. You can't do any of those things in the pocket. So I'm not sure from a defensive standpoint what they're supposed to do. And then on top of that, if you're not allowed to hit a player in the midsection when you're running parallel to them or running from behind from them, that just means the players are going to launch themselves at ankles, at knees, at feet. Like, it just seems like there's a chance that you get like a different type of gruesome injury because this rule has been in place. And, at the end of the day, we won't know until we implement it and see what happens. But I am concerned that this isn't the end all be all for an issue like this.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that to me was my overarching concern as well. Is I'm all for player safety. Since this podcast has started, we have said from the very beginning, we don't root for injuries, right? Like, that has been something that we have very adamantly said the entire time. So I want the players to be safe, but at the end of the day, this isn't a safe sport. That's why we watch it. That's why we love it. That's why there are stadiums built and people fill the seats in there, because it's a gladiator ring and people do beat the shit out of each other, right? I want the players to be safe. But at the end of the day, this is a violent sport. That is what this game is. And while we should try and make it as safe as possible, injuries are going to continue to happen. And now that you have removed this, like Scotty said, my biggest concern is, now what do the 200-pound safeties do when a 240-pound running back is running right at them? They're going to dive for their ankles. What does that do to a player's ankles? What does that do to their knees? And I'm not saying that that's, there are other options, because I'm sure that there are given the moment, but it begs the question, what's next? And I think that's what's concerning for me is, at the end of the day, while I do want this to be safe, it's not safe. If you want to play it safe, go sit at home and let somebody else play, because this isn't a safe sport. And so I am interested. At the end of the day, we're not going to know. We can sit here and talk about it until we're all blue in the face, but we're not going to know until it actually gets implemented and we kind of see what comes next and what comes to follow because this is now removed. And that's what I'm more interested to see than anything else.
I would say too, Scotty, kind of going back to what you said about hip drop quarterbacks, like, this is what almost got Mahomes knocked out of the playoffs 2 years ago. This exact tackle is what almost totally derailed that. And this is what the NFL doesn't want to do. Not that this is going to be the Mahomes Chiefs conspiracy, it's everything's rigged. but they don't want their products to get taken out by these things. Like that's just what they don't want to have happen. Like, and you see, it happened to Mark Andrews. It's happened more recently to Moore. But I think it's not. I would love to see the percentage of tackles that were hip drop tackles compared to all tackles that were made in the NFL, because I think it's just being exacerbated a little bit. But
that's part of the problem too, is that we don't really have a definition of a hip drop tackle. Like if you talk about something like horse collar, like a horse collar tackle is very clear, it's very obvious, whereas a hip drop tackle is so ambiguous. Like is he completely removing his weight from the ground? Is he swiveling? Is he not swiveling? Like there are so many. So when these people go to this meeting and they say, look at all these statistics of all these injuries that have happened. Okay, do they even know what a hip drop tackle is? Like, is there a clear definition for what we're talking about? And I'm concerned that there's not, which is why I think the ambiguity here, I think, could cause a lot of problems as far as the gameplay is concerned. But at the end of the day, like I said, the prevailing notion seems to be that this flag isn't going to get thrown that much. It's going to be an after the game fine, which I'm fine with. If you want to motivate people to not put yourself in that situation, but it's I don't know. I am concerned about this rule. I think a lot of fans are concerned about this rule, and rightly so, but we're not going to know until we see it.
And Slaps and I had talked about this rule during the season at some point in the podcast, and I had said that this gives the referees more ammo to throw the flag. And it's kind of like roughing the passer play, where a defender can't land on the quarterback with their full weight. How does a referee judge that in real time? How is a referee going to judge in real time when a play is happening like that if a hit is a swivel tackle or a hip drop tackle?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me. We struggled with the referees during this season. Time and time again, we said, oh, the referees gave the Chiefs that game, or the referees fucked the Lions in that game. So like,
keep going.
At what point?
Those two examples. Huh?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's all we talk about: Chiefs and Lions, right? But it's like, at what point do we stop? Make the game simple, and don't keep on adding rules that give referees more power.
So, what do you think? Do you think the answer to that is, just avoiding throwing the flag outside of really egregious cases like the Mahomes case or like the Mark Andrews case, and instead implement the fine after the fact? Is that the answer to you?
I don't know, because in that case, you're saying if the player gets hurt, we're going to throw the flag.
Right.
Which I don't think is the answer to. I just think that there needs to be a clear definition on what a hip drop tackle is, or else we're going to see it called a lot more than it probably should be.
Well, and it makes it so much more complex too, because it's not like other moves that are taught. Like, it's not like something a kid growing up in Pee Wee football this is not a technique that you're teaching. This is just a natural reaction to a situation given where your bodies are in that moment. So that's why it's difficult to like coach it out of somebody, because it was never coached into anybody.
Neither was horse collar. Like, when they're running tackling drills. But when they're running to your point, when they're running tackling drills, they're not like, hey, go chase that guy down from behind and pull him down by his pads. Like, you're just naturally doing that. Like, and how are they tackling, staring at the ground and leading with the crown of their helmet? Like, they weren't probably naturally taught that, but that's what it evolved to. And they're just trying to weed it out. I think in our mind's eye, you can all visualize what a hip drop tackle is. I think if you were to ask to describe it to somebody right now, you could do it.
Maybe.
You couldn't?
No.
Enough to where you could write it in a rule book and it was black and white? No. There's no chance.
You're latching on the defender and dead weighting behind him. But that seems very straightforward.
Yeah, but at what point is it a hip drop tackle if you're grabbing him at the shoulder pads? Is it a hip drop tackle if you grab him below the knees at the legs and you unweight your there's got to be a definition.
But what are
the
examples that are out there are literally people going like dead weight and just dropping on the back of their legs. Like, that's literally the definition of it. Like, I think we all know what that is.
I don't know. Time will tell. I don't love and there. Look, I mean, we're nobodies in the grand scheme of things.
Well,
but
speak for yourself.
Sorry, excuse me. I'm a nobody. The rest of everybody here is somebody. But like, there's like pro football Hall of Fame athletes, like JJ Watt, for example. Is like, when are they going to ban tackling? And it's like, you have these players and former players who are even speaking out about this, and they're like, what is this? Like, this isn't fair. I'm all for safety. I don't think we need to say that anymore. But at some point, you have to look at this game as this is dangerous. This is not a game that all of us are just like, yeah, nope, there's going to be no injuries. Injuries are a part of it, and that's why they are getting paid an exorbitant amount of money. That's why they're on national television. That is why we wear their sports team and we wear their names on our backs and we celebrate those victories, because you look at the game of football, it is often compared to war. We're going to go out there and we're going to go to war today, boys. And it's like, yeah, it's not war, but in a way, the physically demanding side of things, it's often compared to that. And why is that? Because it is violent. It is not all right, yep, hey, sorry about that, I won't tackle you that hard next time. Like, it is a violent sport. And a lot of the things that we're discussing in this entirety of the conversation are violent. It is a violent reactionary thing. And it's not something where, yeah, horse collar tackles were not taught, but some of that is probably reactionary. What can I do to get this guy on the ground? Obviously, we have learned that horse collars shouldn't be done, and you're not allowed to do that. And that's just kind of the evolution of the game that we're continuing to see. And now it's evolved to hip drop tackles. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong.
Right.
But at the end of the day, there is violence and there is going to be injury no matter what the case.
Yeah, I would say it's just hyper analyzed from a defensive standpoint, because defense is the only side that can like inflict something on the other person. Right. Like, but on the offense, like you can't block low. You can't, like, there's certain things they also have taken out that help the defense not have to like totally like blocking back towards the goal line. Right. Remember, that was a big thing, like an interception go the other way and you just get to clean somebody out. Like they're just doing it to keep the people on the field. And I think this goes back to what you said, like people are watching to root for their favorite guy. Well, if your favorite guy's not on the fucking field, like you're going to have a really hard time rooting for anybody. So I think it's just going to be more of the same, and people can, hand wring about how it's taking away from what the sport was. But honestly, it has differed from what it used to be. If you look at the statistics of, like, one of the favorite things people love to do is touchdown to interception ratio. Like, that's changed, right? The defense can't really defend the way they wanted to. And so now you're seeing quarterbacks, like, I feel like every year there's like, oh, the first quarterback to do this, and this is the first guy to ever do this. And it's like, yeah, that's a direct result of how the game has fundamentally changed from 70s, 80s, 90s, and the overall statistics are now getting better, and it's getting a little easier to maneuver. You look at how we talk about on this podcast too, for months, year plus now, about how running backs are being devalued. Well, why is that? Well, because you don't have to do body blows all the time. You can throw it over to the middle to a 165-pound guy now and not worried about him dying in 2 seconds. So you can play the game that way, right? Like, you can put your Marquise Brown, you can put your guys out there and not have to worry about them getting totally like depleted by a Troy Polamalu. And one of the things when I was looking up for this episode was that with touchdown to interception ratio, if you look at over the course of time, like right now, Andy Dalton has a better touchdown to interception ratio than Dan Marino and Kurt Warner. Well, is it because Andy Dalton is the most efficient quarterback we've ever seen and he's better than those two? No, it's just the way the game's played. It's evolving. I think it's making it just a little easier to play offense, yes, but I think ultimately, like, it'll end up being a better visual thing for us as fans.
Well, we're not going to have hip drop tackles anymore, but we're still going to have all these turf fields all the players are mad about. So we got that.
That's got to be next.
Hey,
that's got to be next.
Yeah, that's got to be next. That's a good point. Let's go over to kickoff rules, because they have changed in a staggering 29-3 vote in this all staff annual league meeting. 29-3 vote that the kickoff rules have been changed. They are adopting the kickoff rules from the XFL. So we are still going to kick off at the 35-yard line. However, nobody other than the kicker and the returners can move until the ball hits the ground or a player. Before I continue to read this, kickers just get a lot more power here? Are kickers that much more valued? Like, you want a big-time beefy kicker that's super fast?
It's actually kind of funny, because this was a point of – I heard this in an interview today. This was a point of conversation when they were discussing on whether or not the kicker should be able to move before the ball is kicked, because obviously he's kicking it, and then the idea is he's got to catch up to everybody else.
Yeah.
And they specifically, I think they specifically addressed that but the point of this, they made it a point to say that kickers are going to be much more heavily involved on a defensive side when you're kicking the ball off. So I think that is going to be a conversation. Like, maybe you want a kicker, and we talked about this I don't know if you guys remember, we talked about this in the season. Like, what? Who was it? Somebody kicked off for the Chiefs, I think, that was a defensive player, and then they ended up making it, Justin Reed. And it's like, well, why doesn't everybody do that? Like, all you got to do is kick the ball, and then you have an extra defender. Like, why don't we adapt more defensive guys? And I think we might start seeing that. The downside is with this rule is that kickers on kickoff now have to be a lot more precise, because they kick it into the end zone. There's a penalty now. The offense gets the ball at the 30 instead of the 25, and the returner has to return the ball if it's kicked in the target zone outside the red zone.
Wait, so if it goes through the end zone, it's at the 35? Like,
no, it's at the 30, I think.
At the 30.
Because they voted on this twice, and the first time they voted on it, it didn't pass, largely because it was going to be at the 35-yard line, which everyone perceived to be like way too much of a penalty, and so they ended up moving it back to the 30.
Christ
but
almighty.
They're trying to get rid of those touchdowns.
So how does this, I'm learning this in real time because I haven't dove into this. How does this affect then onside? Because onside's been basically nerfed into the ground. Like, good luck ever getting an onside kick. So now I don't know if this helps or hurts it, or
I think that from what I understand, I don't know the full offside or onside rules, but they said that you have to declare for the onside kick. So you can't do a surprise onside kick. You have to declare for the onside kick.
That's bullshit. So if the ball is at the 30, the ball's at the 35-yard line if it goes out of the end zone. So if you kick the ball out of the end zone, you start at 35. The 35-yard. Correct.
Okay.
The ball, if the ball lands within from 20 yards into the end zone, but not the end zone, so 20 yards to the 1 yard line,
goal line,
you want to call it. Yep. Ball starts at the 40. If it doesn't reach that. So if it does not get to the 20,
that zone.
Yep. If it doesn't get there, so if you do an onside kick and it goes sour, you get the ball at the 40.
So just imagine a late season high pressure game with like 50-mile-an-hour winds, and one team just can't get it to the target zone, and the other team just gets the ball at the 40-yard line.
That is unreal. Whoever has to code the Madden game is absolutely shitting themselves right now. So like, I don't even know what the fuck to do with this thing.
This is freaking nuts. So now if the ball goes within that 20 to goal line mark, it has to be returned. It has to be returned. So you have to have a return.
Okay, so you can't wave it and get it. If it's in that zone, you have to return it.
Yeah, you can't call a fair catch or signal. The officials will blow the play dead at that point.
Like this guy's a bitch. And then if the ball, if it goes within that 20 to 10 yard mark and rolls into the end zone, you get the ball at the 20.
Dude, I totally understand why the rest of the world doesn't watch this game. Soccer has like 8 rules. This one is like one ancillary bullshit piece of the whole game. Yeah. It has like 80 rules to it.
Yeah, it's a real. I mean, like me just sitting here reading this is like it hurts my head.
So there's a hip drop tackle on a kick return.
I was just gonna say, and if you catch it in your target zone, do not horse collar, hip drop, face mask, block back towards the goal line.
And then the coach throws a challenge flag, and the Sky Cam has to get involved. Like this is just a mess.
The Sky God,
the chain gang's tripping over themselves. They're like the caveman version of everything else on the field.
I totally get now why the rest of the world doesn't watch it. I just understood it in this moment.
Yeah, it's a
good
mess.
thing we Americans are smarter than everybody else. America.
The trade deadline, gentlemen. The trade deadline has moved. So it used to be week 8. It is now after week 9. I love this. This is actually probably one of my favorite rules that has been implemented. As a dynasty fantasy football player, we have a lot longer of a trade deadline before it gets to the point. I think our games are like 70% completed before our trade deadline. So you have the opportunity. It might be a little, like closer to 65, but like you get the opportunity where you get to figure out from a fantasy football perspective. I'm sitting here thinking, do I have the chance to make the playoffs? Do I have a chance to go all the way? Do I need to make any moves to try and sell my assets because I'm not going to make it, and or purchase assets in order for me to go all the way? Exact same thing happening here in the NFL. I do think that it's just an extra week, so I know that it's nothing crazy. It's nothing, wild, but I think that really does matter because these NFL teams can have an even better understanding of where they're at in the season, what their team looks like, and is there any moves that need to make to still stay competitive and maybe go, win their division or what have you. So I'm all for the trade deadline going to week 9. I don't know. You guys are nodding your head yes, so I'm assuming you guys are pretty in agreement there.
Yeah, free
Honestly,
agents
the
are going to be
NFL should
excited
just
about it.
align with our trade deadline week. I'd be okay
Agreed.
with that. Yep.
Agreed. Hit me up. I'm the commissioner. So.
This is totally dumb, but I've always thought it would be a cool thing. Like, they have those. You ever been in those zombie dynasty leagues where if the zombie team beats your team, then you get to take a player off their team? Yeah. They should just do that in the NFL. Like if you beat a team, you get to take one player off their team. It'd be
that would
sick.
make like a super team.
Yeah, that'd be sick. You imagine you get to the end and you're just like, oh shit.
You'd have two.
I got everybody.
By the time the Super Bowl shows up, you'd have 2 amazing football teams.
Yeah, it'd basically be like an all-star game at the very end. It'd be sick.
That would be pretty fun, but also complete chaos. And then also last piece of change here is Santa Claus is coming to town, boys, because we are getting some Christmas games this year. So they haven't announced how many or what teams or any of that good stuff, but we are going to have Christmas games this year. And the important thing to note is Christmas this year is on a Wednesday. So we're going to have a Wednesday game, at least one, maybe more. Hasn't been announced, but I love Christmas and I love football. So what better things to do than sit on my ass and watch football on Christmas? It sounds like the best time.
Side note, that's a sneaky solid spot for a holiday because you get to take a lot of time off around that. Like you could totally be like, oh, I'm just off all week or 2 weeks or like, oh God, New Year's.
Honestly,
that means kind of New Year's is next Wednesday.
Yeah.
You were thinking the opposite?
Yeah, because if Christmas is on a Wednesday, I'm probably going to have Wednesday off, but then I'm going back to work Thursday and Friday. Like I work Monday, Tuesday, off Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday.
Oh,
same thing for the following week.
Well, yeah, but it's like the little salt man, like I'm the little salt guy, and you just get like a little, you just get like a little sprinkle of fun on that day, and it's like it's Wednesday, you're hanging out with the family, you're probably kind of hungover because you drank with your uncle the night before, and you guys got a little too deep in the bottle, and you're both hungover, sitting in a recliner, watching a football game, talking shit. Like that to me sounds like a good ass time, and then you're like, all right, gotta go to work the next day.
Yeah, I would say, Yeti, if you look at it this way, like those days around there, nobody's really working. So like you're kind of really off. So if the holiday's on a Saturday, well, now you really don't have an excuse because like everybody's working. Like, and you got Sunday and now you're back. So we'll see.
I think Christmas on a Wednesday should just be implemented forever because like you said, it gives everybody the ability to just fuck off for a whole week.
Yeah. It's like a perfect week.
It's Christmas. I couldn't get my invoice done. It's Christmas. What do you expect?
Exactly. All right. Let's go over to Jim Harbaugh versus Keenan Allen. This was just kind of something that I found to be a little interesting here. So Keenan Allen got paid by the Bears $23 million a year. And Bleacher Report had kind of maybe exacerbated what Jim Harbaugh had said here. He literally said $23 million a year playing in Chicago. Who's got it better? And Bleacher Report had said this is like a husband after a divorce saying it's not so bad. You still got the house. So I don't know what you guys think of this. I just thought it was kind of interesting, and I wanted to touch on it.
It's just interesting. It's interesting to see the dichotomy between the way Jim Harbaugh responded to this and then the interview with Ryan Poles about trading Justin Fields, where he said, it was, Justin Fields, it was the hardest decision I've ever had to make. He's been here for 2 years. It's like we're basically married. And then Jim Harbaugh is like, oh, this guy's been on the team for forever, and he's been our best player for forever. He's got the bag. Who gives a shit?
Well, then Harbaugh went even further, and he's saying like he is just all over the place, all over media outlets right now, hyping up JJ McCarthy, saying he is the best quarterback in the draft. He is a generational talent. I'm not buying it. I don't know if maybe he's gassing up the media because Chargers have number 5 pick, and if he's such a good quarterback, Mr. Harbaugh, why don't you draft him? Why don't you trade up? Why don't he might even be there at number 5. Who knows how this is going to play out?
Well, the only person on earth that he's gassed up more than JJ McCarthy is Justin Herbert. So he's happy with where he's at.
Yeah, I think he's good. This is like a dad. Like JJ McCarthy's like his kid. He's basically, what an odd situation too for the NFL and for the Chargers, because he just came from college. They just won a national title. He's got a lot of high profile players. JJ McCarthy is, I would say he looks like a decent asset. I don't think he's that high, but he does have some tools that you're like, okay, we might be able to work with this. But to your point, I think this is a little bit of gamesmanship plus being just like a proud dad of like, oh,
It was what kind of shit?
Shit. He's the best. Like he's
Dodge that landmine.
He's either like a complete dumbass or he's playing 4D chess on everybody right now. And we'll figure out what that is.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was kind of what I wanted to touch on. Is he playing 4D chess, and is he hyping him up so much so that way he like
sabotage?
I mean,
JJ
honestly,
McCarthy fucking sucks, and he's
Well,
just like, everybody drive.
He's goading the Broncos into doing this. I guarantee you. He's like, Broncos, do it. I dare you. He's the best.
Yep. Well, the Broncos reportedly had a meeting with JJ that lasted 4 hours, per Zach Stevens, a Broncos beat reporter. So I think it holds some ground. And do I think JJ McCarthy is a generational talent? I don't.
Tell me if I'm wrong here, and it might just be because they're both white guys, but I get hardcore Zach Wilson vibes from JJ McCarthy. I really do. Like, he's like, oh, impressive in college. He's got some good athleticism, and then you get him in the NFL environment, and holy shit, what just happened? Like, that's the vibe I get.
To further your point there, Scotty, did you see that clip they just posted of JJ where he does a very similar throw that Zach Wilson did on his pro day, where he does this like pirouette out of the backfield and then like chucks it like 60 yards downfield and dots a guy? Yeah. They're going to play that 100 times over and try to convince everybody that he is that. And so I think you're absolutely right. Like I like JJ McCarthy. I think he's better. I think he has more tools than Zach Wilson, and he wasn't asked to do a lot at Michigan. They had a strong offensive line, strong running game, which, sorry, Justin Herbert, you're probably going to get some of this, where they didn't ask the quarterback to make the throws that he needed to make. But he has the arm. Like, you obviously see he can do it. So, but it's just an experiment. Like, are you willing to waste whatever pick you're willing to trade up for on an experiment?
I think it's fair to question whether he can make those throws or not, just because we haven't seen him have to make those throws, right? So can you put the ball into tight windows? We know he's got the arm strength. We know he's a smart kid, but can he drop it in the bucket?
And can he do it time and time again? Because that's what we're missing from Michigan. Like, we've seen him make special plays at Michigan, but it's like he wasn't asked to do it on a regular basis every single game because they had Jim Harbaugh on such a strong running game. So it's just a big question mark. I'm of the point where if he ends up going to the Vikings, I think he'll be successful. If he ends up going to the Broncos, he's going to be Zach Wilson. And it's just because of the pieces around him and the situation those franchises are in. And I just think that's going to be the way it ends up.
God, I hope it happens. I think Sean Payton is a scumbag piece of shit, and nothing would make me happier than watching him continue to fail.
Can he make that throw with Max Crosby breathing cigar smoke down his neck?
Yeah, baby.
Whispering, little boy.
Little boy.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's it. But the Broncos have the 12th overall pick. They could. You look at the Broncos have to trade up, do they not? I mean, honestly, you look at the Broncos and the situation that they're in from a team perspective. They just let their franchise quarterback walk out and go cook somewhere else.
They paid him $30 million to walk out.
Sure, no, they're paying him, but he ain't playing on the team anymore. And so they don't even have a quarterback. They got rid of Jerry Jeudy. Like this team was in shambles last year. And you look at if I was thankfully I'm not a Broncos fan, but if I was a Broncos fan, what would get me excited about this roster right now? Nothing.
Sean Payton.
I don't know.
Sean Payton's a piece of shit.
If you look at the three biggest areas of need, they're probably like at this point in the NFL, like some of the biggest three areas you need: your quarterback, your cornerback, so your secondary, and a pass rusher. Like, they need some pretty big pieces, and especially in a division where you have people throwing the ball, you got some quality arms, you have whatever the Raiders are doing. You're gonna need those pieces.
I just don't know.
Honestly,
I think they're going to have to buy out.
Do you guys think that JJ McCarthy going to the Broncos is going to solve any of their problems, though?
No, I think it's just going to compound it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think if anything, it's just going to add to their problems. And we're going to be looking at the Broncos in the next 2 to 3 years saying, well, they're going to be drafting another quarterback. It's going to kind of turn into a Chicago situation.
But I don't see what other option they have. I mean, it seems like they obviously are interested in moving up in the draft. They've talked about that. Sean Payton's alluded to it. And it seems like at this point in time, what other option do they have outside of just let's just try for the number 1 pick next year? So let's get Shitter Sanders over here from the university.
Yeah,
And
I don't know.
honestly, I feel like all the general managers and coaches are pointing guns at each other right now, and they're saying, "Are you going to take JJ McCarthy? Because he's a future. JJ McCarthy, he's the best quarterback in the draft. Are you going to come up and are you going to take my 4th pick? Or are you going to take my 5th pick?"
It's because they want to sell the farm, but they know that he's not worth it.
Right, exactly. I think general managers are playing that game and they're putting up huge smoke screens around JJ McCarthy as like he's such a great quarterback. He's a proven quarterback. Come up and draft him with the 4th pick.
Same thing happened with Will Levis last year. I mean, Will Levis was somebody, he showed up at the NFL draft with the intention of being drafted in the 1st round. And it was a similar situation where, man, Will Levis is a good quarterback. Like he was somebody who was not even talked about, previous to draft time of season. Like he was not talked about as a 1st round pick, right? But then you have all these talking heads and it's like, man, Will Levis looks like he's going to talk his way into the 1st round. And yeah, he was close to the 1st round, but he was not in the 1st round. He was a 2nd round pick. And why is that? It's because they're trying to be like, hey, they're painting shit in a gold colored color and being like, hey, check this out. This is worth a lot of money, when in reality it's not. And I think that's kind of where JJ, in my mind, I think JJ McCarthy is probably, I agree with Scotty though. I don't think JJ McCarthy's great, but I think if he lands with the Vikings, that would be best case scenario for him.
That's best case scenario for any of these rookie quarterbacks. That's just
also true.
The perfect landing spot. But I want to pick your brain a little bit as a Cardinals fan, Slapdog, because if they move up, the Cardinals' 4th pick is pretty juicy there.
I'm nervous.
So let's talk about that a little bit. Obviously, okay, so as a Cardinals fan, moving down to, what do they have, 12, I think? Moving down is not the end of the world. You can still probably get one of those top 3 wide receivers, not Marvin Harrison Jr., but you can probably end up with one of Neighbors or a Dunze. And you might get a whole bunch of shit. What do the Broncos have to give you? Just pretty much
nothing.
Picks. That's
nothing.
It.
The Broncos don't have anything because they gave all their picks away to get Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. They don't have anything that I want. Like, man.
The movie Draft Day is going to happen to Slaps right in his face.
It happened last year.
Like, damn it.
Yep, but it worked out really great for you last year.
It did. It did work out pretty good for us last year.
But opposite for you now. The Broncos are going to do it to you, and you'll be like, God damn it.
If Sean, that's like my worst nightmare because I don't like Sean Payton at all, and he was one of the people who was potentially going to come to the Cardinals, and it's like that's the ultimate fuck you to me because then he drafted me. Here's my thing. I'm nervous we're going to fuck this up. I'm so nervous we're going to fuck this up because there is such a tight window in the NFL for teams to be successful and be good and be able to compete at a high level. We're starting to like that. That's where my mind goes is like Kyler Murray is getting paid an exorbitant amount of money. He was injured last season. He was injured part of the year before. Like he's finally healthy. We don't have any wide receivers. We have a half-baked O-line that we need to fix. So that's an issue. Right, our defense. We did sign some veterans, and I do think Gannon did a decent job with what he had defensively last season. We've got a bunch of pieces there, but you look at this team. We need offensive linemen, and we need wide receivers, and we have the 4th overall pick. If we get a haul for it, fine. But also, there are 3 generational wide receivers in Neighbors, Marvin Harrison, and Odunze, like you mentioned. We're probably not out, or we're probably out on Marv, unless we stay at the 4. Or we do like a very short trade back down to like maybe the 6 or even the, I don't think the Chargers are going to sell the 5th unless they do it for a quarterback. Marvin's going to go, right? I'm nervous. I'm nervous that we're going to fuck this up and we're not going to get a wide receiver and then we're just going to get an offensive lineman, which is something we do need. But we desperately need help at wide receiver. Like that is our biggest pain point right now. I want something to look forward to and rest my head on a nice comfy pillow at night and get to dream about Kyler Murray throwing footballs to a competent wide receiver.
So let me ask you, I want to ask Yeti this question. Yeti's kind of our in-house smart guy, whereas the rest of us kind of just bloviate about bullshit. But you're welcome, Yeti. I love you.
It's true.
I love you.
But, Yeti is pretty in tune with all of these assets coming out of college here. If you were the GM of the Cardinals and, the Broncos approached you and said, hey, let's swap picks here. What do you want? First of all, what would you need to make that happen? But second of all, okay, you drop down to the 12, or maybe just look at it more broadly. Of those 3 wide receivers with the Cardinals, which one would you be most hyped to take? I mean, is Marvin Harrison Jr. far and away the best?
I think it really just depends on so in regards to the wide receivers, I think it really just depends on what your offense is lacking. Because with Marvin Harrison or Romo Dunes, you're getting a complete receiver that can play on the outside, but you can also move him around to the inside to avoid coverage on the outside from top defenders. With Malik Neighbors, if you look at his route tree, if you look at where he had success in college, he's going to be your traditional slot guy in the NFL. I don't know if you can really move him outside, but he is a yak machine. So you get him the ball in space and he's going to do his thing. So I think the Cardinals need either a slot or an outside. Like they'll be fine with either or any of the 3 options. My only concern with the Cardinals potentially trading back, especially if they trade back to 12, is you look at the teams that would be in front of them. There are multiple teams that also need wide receivers, namely the Giants. The Bears could take one. The Jets could take one. The Chargers could take one. So at that point, we're talking those 3 wide receivers are already off the board. And then they might be looking at Brock Bowers, which is fine. He's a great tight end. But they have Trey McBride. So I think they would need to stay within the top 8 if they want a realistic shot at a wide receiver, unless they just opt for there's a lot of great tackles in this NFL draft as well. So they could possibly draft a tackle at that 12 spot. And then if, let's say they get a second round pick, an early second round pick, they could take a chance on somebody like a Donnie Mitchell or Xavier Worthy or Keon Coleman, like some of those guys that are going to be riskier than the top 3 wide receivers.
I don't want that. I don't. I mean, I don't. Like, I get it. It's not the sexy move, but
yeah, exactly.
But that's not where we're at.
Kyler Murray can't protect himself out there.
I understand.
He's going to end up like Justin Fields if he doesn't have an offensive line.
Yeah, but he doesn't have anybody to catch the ball either. Our wide receiver 1 right now is Michael Wilson. That's a problem.
What about James Conner?
James Conner is a running back. Like, it's just, it is. I agree with Yeti because all those teams, we know that the Jets want a wide receiver. They have made it very clear and evident based on who they're interviewing and conversations that are had. Jets are very interested in getting a wide receiver. I want a Dunze or I want Marv because Neighbors to me is we don't need a slot guy. We need a big body outside guy that can make contested catches. That's what Kyler Murray historically, if you watch him, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but just watching the games, he typically looks outside in, and that probably is because he had somebody like DeAndre Hopkins to be able to throw to. But we need a versatile guy like that, and that can kind of work both inside and outside. And we need a big body guy on the outside. So a Dunze or Marv would be where I want to go. But
so you're joining the group of fuck the Broncos, fuck you and your pick. We don't need you.
Yeah, well, fuck Sean Payton. It's not even the Broncos. It's Sean Payton that I really don't like. But let's move on here. Let's talk about Bills fans for a second. Because Tom Pelissero had spoken with Sean McDermott, and Sean McDermott, being the Bills head coach, had said it would be narrow-minded to say that Josh Allen and the Bills have not had success. Right? And I think that we talk about success in the NFL, right? What does that look like? I think that's where we really need to start because Bills fans and Bills are kind of getting run through the gamut of the Bills are done. The Bills have never succeeded. The Bills have not found success with Josh Allen. That is something that is being said in a lot of media outlets and in Twitter circles. I don't think that's fair. I really don't because the Bills are 63-31 with Josh Allen, and Josh Allen started in the league in 2018, so he's been here for 5 years now. The Bills, the 5 years previous to Josh Allen, were 45-51. Okay, and I know Josh Allen's just one player. right? So there's a lot of other things that are certainly influenced in there. We can talk about Tyrod Taylor if you guys would really like to. Like there are a lot of players. I get it. But the Bills as a franchise right now are a succeeding good franchise who, in my opinion, have found success. They are succeeding. Have they made it to the Super Bowl? No. Have they made it all the way to the end? No. They're 5-4 in the playoffs and 0-3 on the road. Not great statistics. But 5-4 in the playoffs is still a hell of a lot better than a lot of other franchises who haven't been to the playoffs in the last couple years. You want to talk about the Lions, right? Lions, the last time they were in the playoffs in 30 years was this last season, right? So you talk about success, and I think that, we're also hyper fixated on, well, they haven't done anything. They haven't gone to the Super Bowl. They haven't won it all. Do you know how many teams in the NFL get to win the Super Bowl? 1 out of 32, right? So congratulations, Chiefs fans. Like that, and I just don't think, I think that that's not a fair thing to sit here and say the Bills are unsuccessful, because they are succeeding. They are a strong franchise. They are somebody that when people see that they have to play them, people don't get excited about that, because they're a difficult team to play, and they are a good team. So I just thought that was really interesting, because I do see a lot of hate for the Bills and how they're never going to make it and they're never going to succeed. And it's like, are they not already succeeding? Because I would take the Bills franchise right now, as far as the success that they found, over what my Cardinals have found. And I think that, Yeti would probably say the same about the Raiders. Getting to the playoffs that's the goal. That's what any team wants to do. And if you can do that consistently and you're 5-4 in the playoffs, that's still better than 0-9 and not ever making the playoffs, or 0-0 because you didn't make it, So that's where I look at this. And I'm curious to know, like, do you guys share that same mentality, and where do you guys land in this whole are the Bills successful and successful thing?
I know Yeti has some good things to say as well. I will just make one comment though. I think you have to look at it. Yes, compared to teams that have not done very well over the last few years, yes, sure, the Bills have had success. But who are the Bills comparing themselves to ultimately? Who is their measuring stick? Who have they been touting as their rival? Who have they beaten during the regular season but can't seem to do it in the playoffs? And I think when you're a team like the Bills, and when you have the expectations and you have the aspirations that all the Bills fans have for Josh Allen, and they consider themselves peers to the Bengals, peers to the Chiefs, and you look at what those two teams have done over the last few years compared to what the Bills have done, I would say, yeah, they haven't been uberly successful, unless all Bills fans are willing to say, yeah, that's not our measuring stick anymore. We're like, just get into the playoffs team and see what happens. But I don't think that's what they think, because I know what they think they have is an MVP quarterback, which I think he's MVP caliber. And they also have, a great roster around him. And they're just not meeting the expectations that I think they have personally in the locker room. And I think for McDermott, it's an odd thing to say like, oh, no, we've been successful. Like you haven't. You haven't even been to, you should have been to a Super Bowl already. Like, you should have been playing in one with the roster you had, with the quarterback you have. If he is who you say he is, then that's where you should have been. And if he's not, then just admit that you're not going to be that team and then move on. But I think if you're comparing them to who they think they're comparing themselves to, they haven't been successful.
I think it's fair to say that the Bills have been successful, and they haven't in regards to, if you deem success as going to the Super Bowl or winning the Super Bowl, okay, they haven't been successful. But if you look at on paper during the regular season and what they've done in the postseason, that seems like success to me. And I think it's unfortunate for Buffalo Bills fans that they are that Josh Allen is playing in the same era as Patrick Mahomes, because I guarantee you, if we had a podcast 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when Tom Brady was in the prime of his era, going against, or prime of his career, going up against Peyton Manning, Brett Favre, Kurt Warner, Big Ben, Drew Brees, we would have been like, damn, like, is Peyton Manning successful? Because Tom Brady's over here winning 3 Super Bowls in a row, or 2 Super Bowls in a row. And I think that's the unfortunate thing that Josh Allen and the Bills are running into, because Josh Allen is a good quarterback. And I would take Josh Allen over majority of the quarterbacks in the NFL right now. He just has a Patrick Mahomes problem. And the AFC is a damn good conference. And unfortunately, Patrick Mahomes is not going anywhere in that conference. Neither is Joe Burrow. And so the question I have for you guys is, what other quarterbacks would you take over Josh Allen at this point?
Patrick Mahomes.
Other than Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes is off the table.
I
Who are
think
you taking over him?
this is a both things are true situation, because obviously Josh Allen, I think we're all in agreement. Josh Allen is an MVP caliber quarterback. He is someone that if he's on your team, the window is always open. The problem with that is that when Josh Allen's on your team, you have someone like that, and you have some other talent like the Bills have, like Stephon Diggs, and you say, okay, our window is open, and then you don't hit the window, well, then you get the blowback. And that's just the way it is. It reminds me of the Nebraska Cornhuskers under Bo Pelini. It's like the fan base just has one expectation, and if you don't meet that expectation, even though you're better than a huge majority of the league, at that point in time, you don't meet the expectation, something's got to change. And that's what I think this conversation really comes down to. How do the Bills get over that hurdle? How do they do that? What do they have to do? What do they have to change? Is it a major change? Is it like a coaching change? Or is it just they need a couple ancillary pieces to get over that hurdle? Because that's the question the Bills are asking themselves right now, and certainly Bills fans are asking themselves.
I think it's better coaching for me. That's what I look at. And now the roster turnover, especially in this offseason from a defensive standpoint, they lost a lot of defensive players due to cap casualty, even though the cap space isn't real.
They were all injured anyway, so
sure,
it'll be about the same.
But I think it's a coaching thing. I think Josh Allen's best season statistically was when Brian Daboll was still his coach, when he was still helping develop Josh Allen to the best of his ability. And Brian Daboll ain't there anymore. He's now with the Giants, and that's a whole different conversation. But that was his best year, and you saw some regression, right? And same thing could be said about Jalen Hurts in some ways. Jalen Hurts this last season didn't look nearly as good as he did when Shane Steichen was there as his offensive coordinator. So I think the developmental piece from a quarterback perspective is important. And I'm not saying Josh Allen is the sole reason that they are winning or losing, but I think that the coaching philosophies have changed and evolved in different ways that have hindered some of the developmental pieces from these quarterbacks. And that has not made them successful or enabled them to be as successful as they could.
You're saying Josh Allen heard what's the coach's name? I'm drawing a blank. Bill Burr lookalike.
Brian Daboll?
No. The Bills coach.
McDermott?
Yeah.
McDermott.
You're saying he heard McDermott say one good thing about the Taliban and it all fell apart.
I just don't know if I was in the locker room and my head coach said that I would, I'd be like, Coach, I get what you're trying to say, but maybe don't say that.
Yeah. I think so. There's two things here. One, have the Bills been successful by their own measuring stick of what they've done and invested in as a team? I would say not. They've been to one AFC title game and got blown out in that AFC title game. And so I think if you look at what this team could do, I do think there's a multitude of problems. I don't think this falls all on Josh Allen's shoulder. And I agree with Yeti. There's not many quarterbacks that I would take over Josh Allen. I think there's arguments for two, maybe that being Joe Burrow and Mahomes. But for Josh Allen, we talk about the window being open. The only thing that scares me is we've talked about this a lot too, is you don't see a lot of aging running quarterbacks. Yeah. You just don't see a lot. And you do see some transition. You do see some kind of become more traditional. But what sets, if I were to go on Twitter or X right now and I started spouting off stats of all these quarterbacks, but I left off rushing stats, that's the first thing Bills fans are going to go to. Sure. But what about his rushing stats?
Sure.
That is the thing that I think is propping him up right now to be in that MVP conversation, is because he is so big and physical, and part of what makes him the player he is. He just plays with that rugged aggression. But when you talk about the window, you just don't know when that shoe's going to drop from a aging running quarterback. When is the literal wheels going to fall off of him going down the field?
No, I think that's certainly something to keep in mind. I don't think it's going to happen this next season, but yeah, if I was, I would be concerned about that. And once again, I think that goes to developing a quarterback properly. And I think Sean McDermott's not the solution for that. And I think that we've seen it continue to struggle. I think Brian Daboll, you take Josh Allen and you go pair him up with Brian Daboll with the Giants, and that Giants team is going to look a hell of a lot better than they have in the last few years. Period. And let's move over and let's talk about the Giants. Let's discuss Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll and the quarterback situation here with the Giants here very quickly. There are a lot of reports that the Giants may be ready to move on from Daniel Jones. I don't think this is necessarily a surprise to anybody, but you think this holds ground?
It's a surprise to the Bills front office after they paid him a buttload of money.
Giants.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the Giants.
Yeah.
Bills Mafia.
They did pay him a lot of money, but is this bullshit? I mean,
oh shit.
Is it bullshit? I don't think it's crazy to say, but are you guys in agreement that Daniel Jones is probably done?
Yeah. I'm not going to write him off completely, but I think this report is 100% valid. And I say that because of Daniel Jones's injury history. If you look at the course of his history, he's gotten hurt damn near every year except for 2022, which was his contract year. And that fucked the Giants completely, because that resulted in them losing Saquon Barkley because they couldn't pay him in 2022. They had to pay Daniel Jones, and they paid Daniel Jones $40 million a year, who happens to have a severe neck problem and then went out and tore. He didn't have a choice. He tore his ACL last year.
Shame on him for allowing that.
Damn you for tearing your ACL. But that neck injury has some serious weight to it. If you look at what happened with Peyton Manning over the course of his career, it was cut short because of a neck injury. And I'm not saying Peyton Manning has the same injury as Daniel Jones, but he first hurt his neck in 2021, and then he hurt it again last year. So it's been a reoccurring problem, and it could have nerve damage at some point, which is important. As a quarterback, you need to be able to have that full rotation in your shoulder that connects up to your neck. I don't know. I specialize in, fucking anatomy.
Long ass necks like Peyton Manning.
Yeah. Exactly.
No, I think that, there's a lot of ways this could go for the Giants this offseason. Like we talked about a little bit earlier, they have they have picks. They could go ahead and try and trade up and get a different quarterback. They have also sold, what is it? Drew Lock is now there. Is it Drew Lock? They sniped a quarterback from the Seahawks.
Drew Lock. Yep.
Yeah. And they told, Drew Lock went there and was told he could compete for it wasn't a lock at the quarterback position. So they very clearly are looking at all options there. And what really sucks is they're going to pay Daniel Jones a shit ton of money to do absolutely nothing and potentially be a backup quarterback, which is wild. But that's where they're at because Daniel Jones isn't the answer, which is unfortunate because you look at what Daniel Jones did. Daniel Jones replaced Eli Manning, and that's crazy.
Well, and it's also weird to think about, the injury concerns I think are extremely valid. That is very concerning. But it's not like Daniel Jones has had a team to facilitate his success. I mean, he's had nobody to throw to at all, and he's been actually able to make a lot of good plays with his legs, and he's been able to use his athleticism, even though he doesn't look like he'd be athletic at all. But he's been able to do that in spite of the fact that he's got nobody around him. So the injury concerns I agree with, but it's also hard for me to say he's even really gotten a fair shake because he hasn't had an offense to work with.
It's true. Kenny Golladay is not a usable wide receiver. Wan'Dale Robinson at 5'10", not a great stature for a wide receiver. So that's a fair point. You look at the offensive side of the ball, and what has he had? Could we compare Daniel Jones to Justin Fields in some ways as far as the talent level, with Equanimeous St. Brown and Pringle as his targets? He had a lot of who are these guys, wide receivers, and look at the Giants wide receiver room right now. I'm not trying to sit here and defend Daniel Jones because I don't think he is a great quarterback, but I also understand, looking at the entirety of the situation, you had Saquon Barkley, and that's about it. So it is interesting. I don't know where they go from here, but let's just go ahead.
Let's make predictions on that. Do you think that these reports are valid enough that they are going to make moves to draft a quarterback instead of a wide receiver in the first round?
I think they draft a wide receiver.
Yes. They need everything. They have nobody on offense. They need everything. They literally need everything. And I think what Yeti said was, absolutely right. I think there's a lot to be. But I think for the Giants, they were hamstrung with his performance. He had he popped off for 1 year, and now you're like, damn it, we kind of got to pay him. It's one of those things where you're like, okay, if he continued on that path, then we let him go. We're hosed because you do need a quarterback, and he showed that he could do it physically. His body was able to do the things that it was needing to do. But I think now what they're doing is they're basically setting themselves up to implode a little bit, just to be free fall out, because they don't have anybody. They're obviously not. The front office is not playing to win right now because that offense quite literally has nobody on it.
Sure, but what do you have to give to get the guy you want? And that's the question at hand, is you're not going to get Caleb Williams because he's locked, and that the Commanders are probably they will take a quarterback at 2. So like you look at it and it's like, do we take the third best quarterback or do we take the third to maybe fourth or fifth or whatever that looks like for them? And what do they have, the sixth spot right now? Or we take the second best wide receiver or maybe the first best wide receiver. And that's where, they told Drew Lock, hey, the quarterback room is not a lock, pun intended. So you have, I'm of the belief that I do think they want to explore all options at quarterback, but why take the fourth or fifth best quarterback in the draft when you can take the second best wide receiver, see what you have, and then if you're in the same situation next year, maybe your draft picks, maybe you do go all in and try and buy up. But like in a market that is so quarterback dependent this offseason, I don't think it makes sense for them to grab a quarterback at this point.
Well, and not only that, but they're paying their quarterback $40 million a year. So why
Exactly.
not ride that out one more year and give him some additional weapons and work for him to stay healthy? I agree with you. I think they're going to end up taking a wide receiver and punt on the quarterback, or maybe draft a guy later on the line and try and develop him. But I don't think they're going to get rid of Daniel Jones this year, just because of the situation that they're in. They have to get a wide receiver, and they want to give Daniel Jones a chance to succeed because they're already paying him. I just think that's the way they have to go.
It's going to be interesting. Time will tell. I'm excited for the draft. You know who else is excited for the draft? Maybe the Cowboys, because of their free agent moves. They're pretty non-existent. And
solid transition.
Yeah, thank you. Dallas fans have got to be pretty upset. I don't know if you guys have seen, there was a video floating around here today, and it was Jerry Jones in his old skin bag suit, just sitting there all curled up in a little corner. And he's holding a pad of paper, and it's actually really funny. He's holding the pen, and he's got like I said, a pad of paper, and the video zooms into the pad of paper, and it looked like a child had just scribbled on it. It was like all over this paper, and it's like Jerry Jones and his free agency acquisitions of this season.
A deep look into Jerry Jones's mind.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's pretty accurate, because Jerry Jones had come out and was very vocal about Cowboys are going to go all in on 2024, and they have done almost nothing in free agency to secure anybody aside from a long snapper and I think one other player. So
I would say spin zone, maybe Jerry Jones is a human seismograph, and wherever they were experiencing a mild earthquake. He was actually alerting everybody, we do have some seismic activity. Could be. I don't know.
That's the best spin zone I think I've ever heard.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
He's a FEMA sleeper agent, just among us in the population, like Batman.
That's what he is.
I might need to turn my earthquake alerts on for Miami then.
Dude, it's bad. And to compound on this, there were reports today that Dak Prescott was not a secured lock with a contract extension here in the next year or two, that I think his contract is coming up here after the season, I believe. So
yeah, so I think the problem with the Cowboys right now is that they have 3 key free agents that they absolutely need to pay, and I don't think Dak is their priority. I think CeeDee Lamb is their priority guy, because CD, he technically does have 1 more year on his contract, but he can be franchise tagged for next year. But I think with a wide receiver like CeeDee Lamb, you need to pay him before his price goes up, because the price of top wide receivers are only going to go up from here. And if you can secure him now, that's probably what they're looking to do. And then they have Micah Parsons, their stud D end. This guy is going to command, $25 to $30 million out on the free market if he goes out. And that's what the Cowboys are going to have to pay. And I think Dak, unfortunately, is third on that list. He's last on that list because he's so up and down. We don't know what kind of Dak we're going to get, and we don't even know if Mike McCarthy is going to stay as a head coach. So then it's like, if we get a new coach, do we want that new coach to have a new quarterback? So I think Dak is the product of those changes that could be taking place in Dallas.
And just a side note for that, a report that I saw today, if Dak ends up leaving after next season, the cap hit the Cowboys are going to take is $95 million. Like, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with it, that CeeDee Lamb needs to be the priority, especially given the coaching situation. But if they don't figure this out, this is really going to fuck them for a while. And that's just... It's unfortunate that they're in, and I think the point that you're making here is they got to pay they got to pay Micah Parsons, they got to pay Dak, they got to pay CeeDee Lamb, so they don't really have a lot of room to go acquire free agents. But it's just like this team is in a tough situation right now, and they're they're painting themselves into a corner because they want to secure their best assets, but at what cost? Like, at what cost are you going to do that? And the big question, what do you got going on over there?
Hear me out. I'm going to
lay
lean
it on
back
me.
here for a second. Hear me out. Is this why they traded for Trey Lance?
Oh God.
I don't want to get up back on this train again, but like I think that it's. I think you're right, Yeti. Like, I think you look at this and like, I've never been high on Dak because, like you mentioned, you never know what product you're going to get, and I think that he's third on the line in the pecking order here, as he should be. If I was Dallas, you want to obviously CeeDee Lamb's a top 3-4 wide receiver in the NFL, and then you have Micah Parsons, who also is absolutely dominant. So you have to figure out something at quarterback, and Dak Prescott, unfortunately, is going to be that casualty. I'm not saying Trey Lance is actually the answer, but you look at it, and are the Cowboys not? Maybe they're playing some 3D chess here, and they're like, "Hey, we'll buy this guy for nothing, see what the hell happens. Maybe we can develop into something." And they didn't pay a lot for him anyways, so. Is that not a clear indication that the Cowboys are very, like, that is at the forefront of their mind that Dak is not going to be here in the long term and they need to try and figure something out at the quarterback position?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Right now, the Cowboys running back room, let me I wrote this down here. Rico Dowdle and Deuce Vaughn are their 1 and 2 running backs at this point in time. And guess what? Like you said, Dak Prescott is up and down. You can't really rely on him to win you games week in and week out. And right now, they don't really have any established running game. They gave away they let Tony Pollard walk, and Tony Pollard wasn't great, but he wasn't Rico Dowdle. And Deuce Vaughn is like 4 feet tall. It's not like
I was going to say one of them's like the size of my thumb.
They're not going to give him a massive workload. So it's looking at their just obviously the free agency situation is explicable because we understand, okay, they got to pay all these guys, so they can't go out and purchase a Derrick Henry or an Austin Eckler. And we know that the running back market has changed so drastically anyway. So it's, paying a running back is not a guarantee, but they don't have any options at running back. The last remaining running back free agent is J.K. Dobbins, unless I'm missing somebody. And it's
you mean the Achilles master himself?
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't know what this Cowboys team is going to do. I don't.
I don't know. I don't know
Go
either. I was just going to jump in. I think the downfall of all of these problems, it leads itself straight from Zeke's contract that they signed in 2019, where he signed a 6-year, $90 million deal that really handcuffed them. And then they had to watch Amari Cooper walk out the door because they couldn't re-sign him. And then you just saw this slow trickle of assets right out the door. All the while, Zeke aged horribly in like what was 2 years, it seemed like, to where he was like non-existent, not even a threat, had nothing. And then you were relying on CeeDee Lamb to just be the sole, like he's super talented. I love CeeDee Lamb and I think he can do a lot, but I think that offense needs another one, and they could have had that. They could have not paid Zeke. They could have kept Amari Cooper. They could have paid, done what all the other NFL teams are doing and not paying their running backs a lot of money. And then they could have been in a much better position now with some of these contracts to where they're like, okay, cool. We don't have dead money. Our contract's a little better. But Dallas is just like, they're so dead set on the guys that they have being the best that they have that they're not willing to just make calls that are like for the betterment of the future of the team. They're just so dead set on like locking in whatever they have and like holding on for dear life, even though the net result is not really doing anything.
Well, that Zeke signing, you want to talk about why the running back market has gone to shit. I think that is a very clear like example of what happens when you do pay a running back that kind of money and the aftermath that ensues shortly thereafter.
For years.
Yeah. No, 100%. And so like if all the running backs are pissed off that they're not getting paid, go blame Zeke. Because Le'Veon Bell would probably be another
Zeke's
decent
agent.
example. Like that was a prime example in showcase to other NFL teams. This is why we're not going to do this, is because you're going to fall off sooner rather than later. So, and that's why I think that it's going to a more wide receiver dominated market. There's absolutely no reason, period, that Calvin Ridley should demand $90 million at all. But the wide receiver market is hot in the NFL right now, and that's because they don't have to pay running backs. They don't have to prioritize that position because they don't need to, because they're finding that people like Isaiah Pacheco can be more than usable as a 5th or a 6th round pick or whatever he was, and he's the starting running back for the Chiefs and has been dominant. Like, you can just reload towards the end of the draft on I don't want to say bottom tier talent because that's not what they are, but lesser guys because they're cheaper. And that's what the running back market is, and Zeke is the reason being. So I'm of the belief, to sum up this Cowboys conversation, I think that Trey Lance trade was a very clear indication that Dak Prescott's future is not with the Cowboys, and they wanted to try and acquire someone to see if they could develop him to replace Dak Prescott. So I'm not definitively sold on the fact that Dak Prescott won't be with the Cowboys, but if I was a betting man, and I am, I would say Dak Prescott long term will not be there because they're going to have to figure out some other situation there for the quarterback position.
We talked about reloading on running backs. How many running backs right now are projected first round?
I don't think any.
0. Last year, Bijan was like an eclipse of like, hey, you kind of have to. But what was his upside? He could catch the ball out of the backfield. He was basically like another wide receiver you got to have.
He could look nice as eye candy for Arthur Smith next to him on the sideline.
But that's just where we are. That's where we are. They're not spending
same thing
premium.
with Jahmyr Gibbs too.
Yeah,
sure.
You're not spending premium picks on it, and you're not going to spend your premium cap space on it either.
Look at the it was a very shallow talent pool last year from a free agency from a rookie standpoint. Like, I don't think there was from an offensive side of the ball anyway. Like, you look at Quentin Johnston. Where the hell's he been all last season? Where is he? He's currently the wide receiver 1 for the Chargers until they probably draft either Joe Alt or a wide receiver. Zay Flowers. He was decent, right? And then you have JSN, who has been overshadowed by DK and a medley of wide receiver. And like that the last year's rookie class was not nearly as highly touted as this incoming one. And we could probably say that every single year because it's like it's always the new shiny toy is the one you want to play with. But that I think that's also an indication as to why Gibbs and Bijan were drafted so high, is because there just was less top tier talent. And those guys are talented, but I think most teams would rather have Bijan or Gibbs versus somebody like Quentin Johnston or JSN even.
You could argue the 2 best pass catchers coming out of the draft last year were Puka and Sam Laporta, which were like not like premium, but turned out to be probably the 2 best pass catchers out of that draft anyways.
Yeah. All right, boys. We got to get out of here. This has been a long and glorious episode, and I have enjoyed doing it with you, but it's time to go. So, before we get out of here, I just want to let everybody know that, once again, friendly reminder, we are giving away a free, thank you, signed Zay Flowers jersey. Entry super simple. All you got to do is go to your favorite podcast platform, hit the 5 stars, give us a review, and then just go pop over to X, screenshot that review, and reply to us there with your comment. And then you'll get entered for a free. Okay. Zay Flowers jersey. It's super simple. That's all I got to do. And I appreciate you guys.
Don't pop X. Pop over to Twitter or X. Do not pop X, though. Sorry. I had to clear that up for our listeners.
Yeah.
No drugs, please.
Yeah. Okay. No drugs. All right. Love you, boys. We
are
out.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you tune into our new releases every week on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and check out leatherbrains.com for all of your fantasy football needs. And remember, Brainiacs, a championship should be more than a fantasy.